I loved this, and if you're ever looking for a gay romance, contemporary romance, pick this up. It's fantastic. Hello my loves, and thank you for joining me. It's Kirsten and we have quite the stack of books to talk about. We're just going to get straight into it. These are all the books that I read in May. Starting off with the book that surprised me the most is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I didn't expect to enjoy this one. I went in with this preconception that I wouldn't like Thomas Hardy's writing. No idea why, no idea where I got it from, but oh my gosh, was I mistaken? This was so good. I loved the writing. It was just filled with beautiful imagery and brilliant social commentary, which I really appreciated, and I think a lot of it is still applicable to today's world. So this book, we're following Tess, and her mother and father come up with this plan to send her to a family called the D'Urbervilles, who they believe they're related to. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And Tess going there sets about this really upsetting series of events that then plagues Tess's life, which is really hard and it's really difficult to read in places. This is not a happy book. This is a very miserable book, but one that is written so well, and there are times where the depictions of the English countryside are just gorgeous and yeah, lovely, even though the actual storyline is so sad. A lot of the social commentary in this is surrounding more about the hypocrisy of man against women, also Christianity. It's very good. It is slow, but I've noticed, especially more with this month, that I'm less interested in the plot of a book and more interested in the writing, and the quality of writing in this is just sublime. Then I did have a DNF, that's The Thief of Lies by Barb and JC Hendy. I still have my bookmark in it. I got up to chapter 4 and the first 86 pages of this book were just rehashing what happened in the first book, and I just don't think you need almost 100 pages of a book to re-go over the events of the first book. And it was really frustrating because you have two different perspectives in this book, and both of those perspectives you kept re-going over what happened, and it's not like they weren't there. Both of them weren't there for it. Like, it's the exact same series of events that's being retold, and even the setup that we were starting to get seems like it's going to be the exact same plot line as the first book. And the first book, we are following Megiri, who is a half vampire, half human, and Lucille, who is half elf, half human. They put on this con to get villagers to pay for them to vanquish vampires. They don't believe in them until it turns out that they are real and they actually have to go up against real vampires. Feels like we're going to be doing the exact same storyline in terms of when they went up against the vampires and that setting of the town and who the vampires were. It all just seems to be exactly the same from the setup of this book, and I'm not interested in it. The writing isn't anything luscious, and I'm just losing interest in plot-based books, especially when that plot is basically the first book done over again. I have noticed that I've become a lot more liberal with just DNF in a book if I'm not enjoying it. So far I think I've DNF'd 3 books, one for each of the last 3 months, but that's something that I would rather DNF the book instead of force myself to read something that I'm just not enjoying. A book that I was close to DNFing is The Classic Tales of Detection and Adventure by Edgar Allan Poe. This was the short story collection for the month. I wasn't a fan of this. I think this was the prompt for lowest rated on my TBR, and I can see why. The first short story in this I loved. Thought it was fantastic, and this book was the inspiration behind things like Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie books, and you can definitely see why. That first book really showed those fundamental influences. However, the rest of them just didn't get on with. The mystery plot of the books just kind of disappeared. It was more about Dupin just being very arrogant and just explaining how people were inferior to him and this is how he worked it all out. But you didn't get that conclusion, you didn't get the satisfaction of following along with the actual adventure and everything. And the last one of being this lie that a man put together to go to the moon. A lot of it just felt really unnecessary. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't enjoy this one. I did finish it, but not my favourite. Then we have a book that I very much enjoyed, and that's Dangerous Alliance by Jennieke Cohen, and this was fantastic. I loved this book. I thought it was brilliant. This is a book that's been influenced by Jane Austen, and you can really see that with our main character. References to Jane Austen's characters and the plots of her books are constant throughout this book because we're following Victoria, and Victoria is alive at the time of the Georgian? Oh, I did look this up, hang on. Georgian England, late Georgian. And that's when Austen was in the middle of writing these books. At this point in time, Austen has written 4 books. Very good. Loved it. Really, really enjoyed this. It was just so much fun. We're following Victoria and her family, where unfortunately her sister's marriage has not turned out the way they had hoped, which is now forcing Victoria to be married a lot quicker than what she wanted, and for an alliance rather than love, which is what she had hoped for. There is also trigger warnings for spousal abuse, child abuse in this book, and we're following a series of attempted murders against Victoria herself, although she does not put much stock in them at first, and then eventually comes to realise actually maybe this is a bit more serious than what I was thinking. Victoria herself is a very naive character. She romanticises life. She loves the Austen books, and I know for some people it's going to be really frustrating with how repetitive that can be in terms of actually just constantly bringing up the Austen books, but she was reading it at the time, and I can understand that, and wanting to believe that you are these characters and taking inspiration from them. There is also influence from Anne Radcliffe throughout this book as well, so I think it was a mixture of both, but Jane Austen is the definitely more heavily influenced of this book, and I liked it. Was it predictable? Yes. Was it a bit silly at times? Yes, but it was great fun, and definitely a new comfort book for me. Then we have Memoirs of a Geisha by Arthur Golden. I really enjoyed the writing of this book. I think it was beautiful lyrical writing. I am currently reading the true story of the lady that this book was based on, and that's a Geisha of Gion. And so far, I'm only very small bit into that book. Should have finished it by the time this video comes out. But so far, I can say that this book is very different. In my mind, I've kind of separated the two and just seen this as that is based on the idea of Geisha and what may have happened, but definitely not based fully on this person's life because it's completely different. As I said, I've only read a small bit of the actual non-fiction book, but you can really tell the differences. Regardless of that though, the actual writing is very lush and well written. I seem to be using the word lush a lot, but it was beautiful, and the imagery and everything was stunning, and I enjoyed it for that. This is a very slow plot based book, like you're not going into this for the plot, but it's one that I did enjoy reading. And then we have manga, and I read quite a bit of manga this month. Well, quite a bit for me, but I did read Tokyo Ghoul Volume 4, very much enjoyed this one. I like reading manga. Is a nice easy thing just to relax to, yet feel accomplished that you've actually finished a book in a day, which, you know, is always great. But this one was really interesting. It ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I really want to get to number 5, which is thankfully in my June TBR. This one focused a lot more on the ghouls side of things, and someone called Gourmet. He is someone that is specialising and refining the taste of human flesh, and it's quite gory and gruesome, but so captivating, and I'm so intrigued. Don't know what that says about me, but I am really excited to carry on with this one. I've mentioned it a few times, but this is based in Tokyo, and we are following a person who has one foot in the human world, one foot in the ghoul world. Ghouls are people that have to eat human flesh to stay alive. It's interesting to see it from his perspective though, because you do get both sides to this story. Then we have Sailor Moon. I reread volume 3 and then read volume 4 because it had been a little while since I'd read this one, and I was kind of forgetting exactly how it ended, so I decided, you know what, they're quick easy reads, why not read both? So I did. It was great. Volume 4 has definitely been my favourite volume so far, and is my favourite part in the actual TV series that I watched growing up, so I really enjoyed this. This one is a middle grade manga, and we're following a group of schoolgirls who protect the Earth, and they are all representatives of different planets, unless Sailor Moon, which is obviously Princess of the Moon. They all have different abilities based on their planet that they represent, and they use these abilities to protect Earth. There is a love story mixed in this as well. It's just fun, it's enjoyable, and I have nostalgia for these, so I'm always going to enjoy them. And then we had a lot of rereads. May was the month of rereads and I really enjoyed it, but that was because I was doing a lot of like early shifts and night shifts and I just needed stuff that was easy and enjoyable. And the one that ticked that box perfectly is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is probably my absolute favourite feel-good book ever. It's just so much fun. We are following Prince of Wales, the son of the First Lady, President of America. These two people who go from enemies to friends to lovers, and it's fantastic. This world is very hopeful. It's kind of set in an alternative to our world. It makes you wish that our world was so much better than what it actually is, but it's just so much fun as well. It's just so good and I love this. And if you're ever looking for a gay romance, contemporary romance, pick this up. It's fantastic. I can't comment for Casey McQuiston's other books. I've heard mixed reviews on her other two books, so I haven't picked those up, but this is definitely up there. This was my reread. Well, it was my first physical read because I'd listened to the audiobook and I just adored it. I was laughing out loud in places. I annotated the heck out of this book because it was just brilliant, and this is definitely my go-to if I'm ever feeling sad to read this, because you can guarantee you will be feeling happy by the end of it. Another fun reread was The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. This is a YA fantasy, I'm gonna say romance, but light. I don't read a lot of romance, so whenever there's a bit of romance I chuck it in there. But this was great. This was good fun. We're following our main character, whose name I forget. That doesn't sound good, does it? Hang on. Alessandra. And Alessandra has a plan. Her plan is seduce the king, marry the king, kill the king so she can be queen. Fantastic. She is headstrong, she is willful, she is so unapologetically herself that it's great fun. And yes, this book is outlandish. Yes, it is silly in places. Yes, it's not a fantastic book, but it's fun. And moments of this book are so well written. Like, there's so many quotes that's to do with women and their value and not being afraid to be who you truly are, that I just found it great. And that's the reason why I keep this book, is for those moments throughout this book. We have Alessandra who makes two friends and they end up being so close, and it's lovely to see their friendship blossom, see the honesty between all of them. I think it's great. And also, you know, quotes about women not being defined by what she does or doesn't do in the bedroom. Don't let anyone ever tell you that waiting is silly. It's your body, do with it what you will. Like, there's a lot of empowering quotes like that throughout this book in what is really quite a ridiculous story and has like a Robin Hood moment throughout it. It's good and I enjoy it. And I know it's not for everyone, but I really enjoyed my reread of this, and it was definitely what I needed at the time. And then the last reread for the month was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell, and this was not a fun reread. This is definitely a harder hitting book, talking about a topic that is very dark. You do need to be aware of that going into this. It's following Vanessa, and you have two different timelines. You have the timeline from when she is a child being groomed by her English teacher, to when she is an adult and her constantly telling herself that this was her love story. And she does say at the end of the book that if it's not a love story, she cannot deal with it. She cannot deal with the reality that this wasn't a love story, even though that she does know, but she doesn't want to admit this, because then everything about her life that she's built upon that's revolved around this relationship that she had is just horrible. And it's so heartbreaking to read that. It is difficult read, it is explicit in places, and I would advise caution going into it, but it is very impactful, very powerful, and I do think it does a good job of explaining and showing how people in positions of power can easily abuse it, and also how people will just not listen to you. There is another person that came forward about this English teacher, but she's ridiculed, ripped apart by other people. Social media is just trying to get the story from her, and her coming forward doesn't have the effect that she wanted it to have, about trying to get it out there so people are aware, so that other people can feel like they can come forward and make a difference. And that doesn't really happen, and it is also quite sad in this book as well. But also it talks about the pressure that people do have to come out and say their stories, and how that pressure shouldn't be there, and it is your choice whether you choose to come forward or not, and you can help in other ways. It does a lot, it talks about a lot. It is a hard-hitting book. It's one that I don't want to say I enjoyed, but I think this book does a really good job of handling such a difficult topic. And the final book I read for the month, which is probably my favourite book of the month, and that's Elektra by Jennifer Saint. My mum's currently reading this one, so I only have the dust jacket to show you. But this was fantastic. This is based on Greek mythology, and we have 3 different perspectives. We have Clytemnestra, who is the wife of Agamemnon, who is the person that went to Troy, that got everyone, all these armies together to fight against Troy to get Helen of Troy back. Clytemnestra is also Helen's sister, so someone that you really don't hear much talk about. You have her storyline, everything that happens to her, the heartbreak, which I think was really portrayed very well in this book. Like, you really do sympathise with Clytemnestra and you feel her sorrow and just rage, and it is a revenge plotline for her. Then you have Elektra, and Elektra is Clytemnestra's daughter. She idolises Agamemnon, and she's knows what Agamemnon has done, but at the same time she is a child wanting her father back, and her mother kind of disappears due to grief. Like, she's there but she's not really there for her, and that you can see how that twists everything, how she becomes more easily influenced by others who have a different perspective on things. And so you have her rage against everything and her resentment towards her mother for her mother not being there, being a mother to her, and just focusing on the fact of what happened. And again, this was really well written so that you could really sympathise with her perspective as well, even though you know what's happened with Clytemnestra's perspective. Like, very well done. Very well done. 2 sides of the same coin with this story, and it was done so well. And then the third perspective is Cassandra, and Cassandra is Paris's sister, who is Paris, the whole Helen and Paris getting together and the reason why the Battle of Troy even happened. She's his sister, and she is someone that was gifted with prophecy, so to know what's going to happen in the future, but then cursed so that nobody would ever believe her, and you just have her feeling of hopelessness at the fact that nobody will ever believe her, that she knows what's about to happen but can do nothing to stop it, and nobody will heed her warnings anyway, and her storyline is just so sad. And it's about these 3 women and what they have to go through, and I think Jennifer Saint does an amazing job at portraying each of these 3 women, each of the hardships that each of them go through. I think it's just fantastic. I would highly recommend this book. I love it. My mum's currently reading it, and even she said there was a point in this book, what happens with Clytemnestra, and she was just like, I almost cried at that point because it was just like a gut punch, and it is. And that's what this book is like. There are so many emotions throughout this book that you just... brilliant. Loved it. If you haven't read it, go read it. But there we are. Those are the books that I read in May. We have quite a few. Honestly, out of all of these, only 2 of them were disappointing, one of those being a DNF. Now, that could just be because so many of them were rereads. We did end up with 4 rereads this month, but it was great. Let me know, do you like rereads? I love them. I love rereading books. I like seeing what I get from them. In all honesty, I think I actually prefer rereads to reading it for the first time. Maybe with a couple of exceptions, I don't know, but on the whole, 100% prefer a reread. I think you can get so much more out of a story by doing that. And yeah, this was the month of rereads with a couple of just standout books, mainly being the classic Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Elektra, the mythology book. Both of those. Fantastic. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, then let's put a leaf emoji, because there are beautiful gold foiled leaves on this cover, like all over. It's absolutely stunning. So let's put a leaf emoji. And thank you so much for watching. So if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it that thumbs up, subscribe, comment to let me know that you're here. Social media links will be linked below, and I will of course catch you in the next one.